Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. Peter Rosenberger is our next guest. He is a regular here, joining us on the last Monday of every month at 10 a.m. for the Caregivers Hour. He is an exceptional voice of experience for an unprecedented need. For more than 30 years, Peter has personally traveled the path of the family caregiver. Through this journey, Peter discovered a caregiver can not only survive, but thrive in oftentimes grim circumstances. In an unparalleled journey with his wife Gracie, Peter has navigated a medical nightmare that has mushroomed to 80 major operations, including the amputation of both Gracie's legs below the knee. These difficult experiences led Peter to work with more than 80 treating physicians in 12 hospitals, seven medical insurance companies, and medical bills soaring to more than $10 million. All these circumstances resulted in Peter developing a firm grasp of the healthcare issues faced by families with disabilities. You can hear Peter on American Family Radio every Saturday at 7 a.m., on Salem Radio all across the nation on Sundays at 3 p.m., and now we're very excited starting this Sunday. You can listen to Peter on Sirius XM channel 131. Joining us here on the last Monday of every month at 10 a.m. Central Time for the Caregivers Hour is the host with the most, because he's got a lot more going on than I do. And you can find him at standingwithhope.com, their prosthetic recycling ministry. Welcome from his new home base in Montana is Peter Rosenberger. So 5 o'clock Central, 6 Eastern.
Right, and I'm doing that all the way out here from a non-disclosed location in southwest Montana.
Right. Now, this non-disclosed location, we certainly have a lot of pictures to triangulate from. So I believe I have found you with the elk colony up there in the Montana mountain range.
Eagling here pretty soon. I just watched an eagle. I'm watching him kind of just fly around. Yesterday I saw a moose in the thicket down there, and then last Sunday when we were going to church, we had to stop for a cattle drive. So it's a long ways from the city lights of Nashville.
Well, what people don't understand, this isn't a season in life where Peter is retiring from being a voice of caregiving and retiring from caregiving. You relocated to Montana for the benefit of Gracie.
Cool, dry air is her friend with all of her arthritis, and we tested this out. We tried it out, and it worked for her. We've been coming out here many years to her family's place, and we decided to make this move. It's been a huge step for us. We kind of left everything we've ever known, but it does give her a better quality of life.
Well, and that's what a caregiver, really his mantra is it's not about me. It's about me providing for the best possible care, the best possible environment, and putting the needs of the, what is the name of the person you provide care?
Well, they're called the loved one, and I think what I tell my fellow caregivers is this: you look at the unit, okay? What's best for the unit? And you have to make decisions like that, and sometimes not everybody gets everything they want, but everybody wins if you do it for the unit. And there's not and the other thing is too, Eric, I think that I found that a lot of people get real torqued, am I doing the right thing? And I don't think that we're into a moral sin issue when we're looking at these things. I think we're into a faith issue where we just step out and say, God, we've gathered as much, you do your due diligence, and then you make your decisions based on the best information you have. And if if it doesn't go exactly as you planned, you adjust. If you missed something or omitted something or committed something, you ask for forgiveness and you move on. But if you get yourself torqued up, am I doing the right thing? Well, if we had a sure thing, we wouldn't need faith.
Very true.
I mean, we have a sure thing in the fact that we have Christ, but we don't see it as such. We want to have everything. What's going to happen if we move to Montana? Is this going to be okay? Well, I don't know, but we trust that God is okay, and therefore we will be okay because we will be trusting in God. That's the way your hierarchy has to work with this. And I mean, I don't own this. I just simply I see that now, and I try to aspire to that.
Well, what maybe people get confused by is that you're a caregiver to Gracie, but you also have needs. You have things for you, and in this equation, there's got to be some kind of balance. It can't be 99 for the person that you love and 1% for you, because you're going to get in that situation, and that's where that resentment, that's where your whole foundation of your testimony, that you were not the caregiver, not the husband, not the covering that you are today when you first started navigating and realizing what you were really getting into and had become overwhelmed. So you've experienced what millions of people out there have experienced. The only difference is you've now become a voice for the caregiver. You've now become an advocate for the caregiver. Lots of people are advocates for the patient or the doctor, the nursing team, the therapeutic team. All those people are advocates for Gracie. Okay? You're an advocate for Gracie. You love her, you adore her. The family's an advocate. But there was a Peter that was like in the midst of, I'm pouring out from an empty cup. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do it. I'm overwhelmed with the magnitude of the problem, and I cannot stop my wife from hurting, and I cannot reconcile, and I cannot stop thinking 24/7, knowing that I cannot take her pain away, and there's nothing I can do. Nothing. And that's got to be frustrating. It's got to be heartbreaking.
Thanks for cheering me up this morning, Eric.
Well, it's what we're here for. There's nothing like a word of encouragement, and that was nothing like.
Sir, I perceive you're a prophet.
Right there you go. Nothing like a word of encouragement, and that was nothing like a word of encouragement.
Yes, to all what you said, and I have to think. One of the things I'm trying to explore while I'm out here, now that we've made this move and I'm looking around and we're 50 miles from a traffic light, we're, 10 miles from the paved road. We are in a very remote area, which I can do all the jobs that I do. They say Montana is a small town with long avenues. And so, and we had to go to Billings the other day to see her prosthetist to get her legs worked on. Well, that's 200 miles one way. That's a long ways for a doctor appointment kind of thing. But it's just part. Of course, the speed limit's 80, and I think it's more of a suggestion out here.
Right.
but I've been thinking about this concept, and let's we talk about all the nuances of caregiving, but let's take it back to a biblical point of view, which is this is going to mean something to you. It's a Sabbath rest that we're looking for as caregivers. But what does a Sabbath rest look like to a caregiver, particularly a caregiver who runs his own business? Because it's hard enough to have a Sabbath rest when you run your own business. And I serve as the music director of a little church down here in the valley. I run Standing with Hope, which is our parent nonprofit that we do we have the two programs, the prosthetic limb and the caregiver outreach. I host the show. I have to build the show and constantly be tilling that ground. And then I'm a full-time caregiver. So where does Sabbath rest fit into that? I mean, you can't just turn it off for Sundays. And I've been trying to think about that. What does that look like for us as a caregiver? And sometimes I don't think we get a whole day of Sabbath rest. Mm-hmm. I think that we have to be creative with this. And I don't know that God gets all that worked up about it. I don't see that he has, and I don't see that he's provided anything different for me to do other than to try to be creative, but make it a goal to have some kind of Sabbath rest. So, for example, for me, if I get out on a four-wheeler and just go up in the forest and just spend some time, just take a couple hours, just whatever. Last time we talked about, I got out on a horse and went out looking for cows. And with a range rider that's up here, they got a herd of cattle. I can see some of them up there. And so we went out looking. We didn't find them that day. We were looking for cows in all the wrong places. You could sing that if you want, but looking for cows but that would to me, it's not for everybody, but for me, that was a straight shot of oxygen right into my soul. Will Rogers, this is not theologically correct, but Will Rogers used to say there's nothing wrong with the inside of a man that the outside of a horse can't fix. And I love that statement. And so when I got out there on horseback and was doing that, I thought, okay, and I could breathe a little bit. And I was able to kind of be, in the present moment with my thoughts, with my heart, with God, and just resting in my spirit. Sleep ain't rest. And sometimes I think we confuse sleep with rest and rest with sleep, and they're vastly different things. Rest is a conscious act, whereas sleep is an unconscious activity. And how am I going to rest in God while I carry all these things? And that's kind of a journey I'm on right now. And after all these years of doing this, because I've had too many people that I really respect that have said to me, "You need a Sabbath rest." And so I would always say, "Well, what does that look like?" And maybe this is what it looked like. Maybe it looked like me yesterday. There was a moose down there in the thicket,
right?
And I went down there and I just for X amount of time I forgot about everything in the world, and just was watching that moose. And that you talking about just something that just causes you just to well up with just I don't know, it's hard to describe because and a lot of people, again, this is not for everybody. The outdoor nature's scary sometimes. Nature's dangerous, and but for me, I really, really, really enjoy those kinds of things. And so I don't know. I mean, and I think you make those things where, okay, this has to benefit everybody. And I'm looking forward to, at some point, learning how to fly fish. And then when snow season starts, which we'll probably get a freeze here in the next couple of weeks, but we won't get snow yet. I mean, anything to ski on, but I like to ski. And I got a friend of mine down at the church who's a ski instructor. So, and I'm a pretty good skier, but I'm looking forward to him teaching me how to be a really good skier. And, so those are things that I'm trying to insert into my life so that at the end of the day, I am being recharged. Because that's the whole point of a Sabbath rest, is to be recharged. And because you have spent and spent and spent, and we caregivers spend all the time. So I don't know what that looks like for everybody else. Some people really get something out of gardening, really get it out of it. I don't have any kind of green thumb. I may grow a garden out here, I don't know, but so far I've not been impressed with anything I've tried to grow. Some people love to paint. Music has been part of that for me. So I don't know. We'll see. This will have to be an ongoing conversation on Sabbath rest for caregivers.
Well, it's interesting. Dr. Timothy Jennings is on with us once a month. He is an expert on the aging brain, the God-shaped brain, and the God-shaped heart. And in regards to the aging brain, this is the new kind of focal point for early onset dementia, then Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and Lewy body later in life onset of dementia. And dementia is becoming a huge issue of one, because it's not, it doesn't necessarily rob life, it deteriorates the brain.
And our bodies live longer, our brains don't.
Exactly. So we talk about that, and last week or 2 weeks ago he was on, and we were talking about sleep, this concept of rest, and all the medical practitioners tell you that 7 to 8 hours is what each person has to have in order to have a healthy functioning body, healthy functioning mind. And he clarified something for me that I've struggled with, and that is, do you have to have a regimen where, if you you go to bed at 11, you wake up at 6 or 7. Okay, that's your 7 or 8 hours sleep. Well, what about me? I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll write 2 chapters of a book at 3 o'clock in the morning and go back to bed. And I said, well, I guess I've completely shot it because I don't get that. And he goes, no. He said what they leave off is that in a 24-hour period, the body needs 7 to 8 hours of sleep. He said you can do that with a half-hour power nap. You can do that with going to sleep, waking up after 4 hours, being up for an hour or two, going back to sleep for 3 hours. You're covered. And I said, I've never heard any doctor, he's a licensed psychiatrist, psychopharmacologist, Bible expert trained, and all medically trained in practice. And he said, no. He said, when we talk about 8 hours of sleep, I guess we have sent the message that you've got to go to bed, and if you're not sleeping 8 hours in a row, you're not getting enough rest. And I've power napped every day for over 40 years. I take between 15 and 30 minutes. I remember being at AT&T in the huge Beaudry Center in Los Angeles, where I had the big office and the big window and the admin outside, and somebody would be on my calendar for a certain hour, and she would look in, and my feet were on my desk. I was leaned back, my mouth was open, and it was obvious that I was asleep. And she said, you'll just have to wait until Mr. Walker wakes up. And they said, well, I have this appointment. She said, you'll just have to wait until Mr. Walker wakes up. We don't wake him. Those are the instructions we're given. Now, I can go for days with a schedule like that because I grab time every day, still do it, every day. It always starts out as prayer, and the Lord knows that if I lay down, close my eyes, and begin to pray, that my intention is to spend more time with the Lord, full well knowing that within 30 seconds, a minute, but I'm still prone and praying, I'm just not aware of it. And that's brought me to this age where, and my mother does the same thing. She's 93, and she plays golf twice a week. She goes out dancing at night. She's had a steady boyfriend for 2.5 years. They just got back from a trip to Nantucket, and she takes a power nap during the day, always has. So there is a certain amount to be said about finding this pattern of where you receive rest, where you receive and rest is short for restoration. And we forget that the Sabbath is for restoration of ourselves and our relationship with God, so that we can then be in restoration of this ministry of reconciliation, which is an offshoot of restoration, that Paul so eloquently laid out in 2 Corinthians 5:17. So it makes sense that you would be seeking after God's plan and God's pattern to fill you back up. That makes sense.
Well, and Scripture says, He's going to restore what the locusts have eaten. And, when you deal with the disability for as long as we have, you've lost a lot. It's eaten at you. It's taken from you. And we made a drastic decision, but we live a drastic life. And, we're still kind of, I mean, we've only been out here several months. Now, we've been coming out here 30 years, but we've only been living out here for several months. So we're still kind of working out the all the metrics of this thing. But I'm exploring this concept in a way that with an aggression that I've never had before, but because I couldn't do that where I was in Nashville. I mean, I just lived kind of frenetically, and a lot of caregivers do. And so I thought, okay, I've got to, if I'm going to be having the kind of voice and the platform that I have for family caregivers, I've really got to mind this issue in my own life and see how does this work out, because I have to be able to speak from experience. Your authority is in your experience, not in your opinion. And nobody needs to hear my opinion. I don't even want to hear my opinion. But my experience, on the other hand, is different. And so if I'm taking the time to bang this out with God and try to figure, okay, what does this look like when you're dealing with this? Then I think it's going to broaden the scope of my message to my fellow caregivers. I don't share anything with caregivers that I'm not working out in my own life. You know, like I said, I don't just try to come up with some kind of. I really don't like that when I see a lot of people who have media platforms and they got to come up with something new, something, you know, whatever. We got that or new revelation, which I theologically oppose. But I don't feel like I have to come up with a new big hook or gimmick or the new fad. There's nothing about caregiver that's fad in that whole fad arena. It's hard work, it's endurance, it's fortitude, it's strengthening. It is just knuckling down and doing it. That's not fad, and that's not really attractive, and that's not really easy to sell. But nevertheless, we've got millions upon millions upon millions of people doing it. How do we help them? Why should we help them? What does that look like? And if I'm going to be stepping into that place of leadership, then I need to be constantly banging these ideas out in my own heart and see what it looks like. And God has seen fit to let us come out here into this wide open country where I can, even though it doesn't sound like I can today, because something got a hold of me. We were around a lot of hay yesterday, and but it's, you know, when you come out here and you know, there's a vastness to it. And I think sometimes with me as a caregiver, I've been so closed in. I mean, I felt like I just couldn't get above it. I couldn't breathe. It smothers you. The city life was smothering me, and I needed to do something to kind of, you know, catch my breath a little bit. And you know, I don't own this yet, Eric. I really don't. I'm just now exploring this from a concerted effort, and so we'll see.
You know, it's interesting that you left a place where you had deep roots. You had collegial roots there. You went to Belmont. So you and Gracie met. You played the piano there, and she sang there and recorded there. Montana's where her family was, your in-laws. You made trips out there. You know, it almost seems like unless you have a plane for you to take off and put a landing strip in to get to some of the places where she needs care is going to be a 2-hour drive. It is going to be a 3-hour drive.
Some things, most of the stuff they can do in the local community hospital down here, which is 17 miles away. It's a beautiful drive past, you know, fields and herds of antelope and that kind of thing. But there's all of her doctors in Nashville agreed she's got to leave. She cannot. Her arthritis is going to get worse. This humidity in the east is going to just cripple her, and no more surgery. That's the goal. No more. We can't do any more to her. So from here on out, it's prosthetics, physical therapy, and maintaining her internal functions. And most of that, in fact, she's seeing her primary care doctor out here today. Virtually all of that can be done down here, which is a real blessing. And so the only thing we don't have here are prosthetics. But you know what? We don't go to the prosthetist every week anyway.
Right.
We've had to a little bit because we had a little bit of a mechanical problem. But those, once you kind of get them going, then it's a matter of just checking in every 3 to 6 months, if that much, you know. And so, yeah, we did leave everything. We had big roots, deep roots. You know, I was Southern born, Southern bred. When I die, I'll be Southern dead. And our kids are back there. Grandchildren are there in Birmingham. You know, they all come out here, but at the same time, it is a long ways away. And I don't have a plane. I don't have Caregiver One. And so, you know, it's a big adjustment. I was just in Richmond last week. I flew over there and spoke at a conference, but I left here in the morning, got everything done, got to Richmond, spent the night, got up the next morning, did 2 1.5-hour sessions, got on a plane and got back the next night. So, I mean, I'm in and out that quick. But, you know, so you have to plan a little bit for the commute, but, you know, I get to look at an eagle.
You get to look at an eagle. You're right. We're talking with Peter Rosenberger, as we do on this hour of every month on the last Monday of the month at 10 o'clock for the Caregivers Hour, because we care about you. We care about you because you are one of, what's the statistic, 40 million?
At least.
At least 40.
There's conflicting numbers, but some of them is 65, as high as 65, and I think there's actually more.
Of someone in your life that you are providing care for, and you have hit certain anticipated bumps along the road, because there is one who for 30 years has been traveling that same road, and if there was a pothole or there was a ditch or there was a rail or a tree to hit, he will tell you straight up, I've navigated this road, but I have not navigated it well. But I am finding more and more new to share and to bring comfort to my fellow caregivers, and that's why he authored the book Hope for, or is it Hope? What's the new one?
For the Caregiver, and 7 caregiver landmines and how you can avoid them.
There you go. The 7 caregiver landmines I have right here, and then the 7 caregiver, now you have a new edition out, and there's Hope for the Caregiver as well. Both of those are on Amazon. The front page for the ministry, and there's a prosthetics ministry, and I'm fascinated to talk about how you and your local church can get involved in something so radical as a prosthetics ministry. So we're going to talk a little bit about Standing with Hope when we come back from this break with Peter Rosenberger on this Caregivers Hour. We'll be right back. Not everything that makes the headlines has biblical importance, but many events that happen around the world do, and you never hear about them. Igniting a Nation is pleased to teach Revealing Prophecy every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at the Marriott 280 in Birmingham. We will cover worldwide events and insider information that will connect the dots of what's happening around the world with biblical prophecy. If you happen to miss a class, we'll televise each week's class at 10 o'clock Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our social media outlets. Copies of the teachings will also be available to purchase on our website at www.ignitinganation.com. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of 2 Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Peter Rosenberger, as we do during the Caregivers Hour on the last Monday of every month in the 10 o'clock Central Time hour. He's the author of 7 caregiver landmines and caregivers, Hope for the Caregiver. Peter, welcome back to the program.
Well, thank you very much.
You have, as part of your caregiver program, not only do you have the 2 broadcasts weekly, and those are interactive. I want people to understand that they need to get the call letters, they need to go up and get the phone number. The phone number should be on every page. I'll look for it and see if I can find it here, where they call in. People are calling in questions or emailing you questions to the website, and you're answering specific situations, specific questions that people have. Obviously, you have show prep. When I was doing basically this show on radio, you always had preparation for your opening monologue.
Well, you prepare.
Well, you live it. See, there's a difference. Yours is a living, dynamic commentary about what happened yesterday afternoon driving to Billings, Montana, for 2 hours. Yes. There's a difference in us talking heads, us Rush Limbaugh's or Hannity's. We're not investigative reporters. We're talk show hosts. We're people that facilitate dialogue between experts, and we pull it out of you and lead you and direct you where we want you to go. We're air traffic controllers. Okay, you're actually living this. This is why we have you on, because you're living this. So your radio program, you're addressing the needs that you're dealing with and the needs that others have brought to you. But you also are more than just words. And James writes that faith without works is death. And so it's one thing to be a source of information, a word of encouragement, and certainly sharing examples. Yours is a living testimony. Gracies is a living testimony, and that's extremely important. But you've actually gone one step further and said, and I'd actually like you to tell the story, because I don't think you've ever told me the story about where Standing with Hope was birthed. Okay, was that in the prosthetics office, when you, being who you are, asked the question, so you just took my wife's leg, what are you going to do with it?
Actually, it was birthed in the hospital. It was Gracie. This was her vision, and she had just had her remaining leg amputated, so now she's a double amputee. And she had walked that morning on 2 prosthetic legs for the first time. She'd been an amputee for 4 years at that point. She'd already been walking on her right prosthesis. Her left one, they got her up on it, still had a bandage on it, still had drainage tubes, all that kind of stuff, but they get you up pretty quick. She took 10 steps that morning across the room with the walker. It's excruciating to watch her do it. And still had her IV tube, the whole thing, and her prosthetist was there, and she walked to him and just fell into his arms and just hugged him and thanked him for giving her, because she's the first time she's walked with straight feet since her car wreck. And later that afternoon, she's laying in a hospital bed, and she's flipping channels, and she sees a documentary about Princess Diana and all the work she was doing with amputees in Southeast Asia. And Gracie saw all these people that looked like her. And she raised her hands there in the hospital bed and said, Lord, I'd like to do this. I would like to use prosthetics as a way of communicating the hope of the gospel. I know how important good prosthetics are, and I know how important the gospel is, and I'd like to do this. She became the first double amputee woman to launch a prosthetic ministry, period. Paul McCartney's wife at the time was a single amputee, and she took over for Princess Diana, but Gracie became the first one to do this, to share the gospel. And the first double amputee, period. And we started doing this, and we started, and it was working very successfully. And then her health took a beating and went just down the tubes. And she's still crawling out from, that's one of the reasons we're out here. And she's still crawling out from underneath that. And in the process, about 8 years ago, our board of directors sat down with me and they said, look, Gracie cannot be the front person for this anymore. She just can't. She physically just cannot do this. And we think we would like to also expand the scope of this ministry. Whereas Gracie's experience is in prosthetics and amputation, yours is her caregiver. And there's this growing need in our country of somebody to be a voice of clarity to the family caregiver. And we think you're that guy. And we want you to write a book, and we want you to get a show. And I thought, well, shucks, I ain't got nothing else to do. And I started to think, what would I write to a caregiver? By that time, I'd been a caregiver for 25 years. And I thought, okay, what would I write to my 22-year-old self who married a woman with a broken body? And what would I say to this young man? And I started writing to that young man, saying, son, here's what's coming down the pike, and here's how we need to prepare you for it. And I went to do a show. I went to a WLAC in Nashville, big 50,000-watt radio station that carries Rush and Sean and Dave Ramsey and all the big names in radio. I said, I'd like to do a show for caregivers. They looked at me and said, we don't get it. What, nursing homes? We don't get it. And no, I said, no, it's not nursing homes, it's for caregivers. He said, we don't see this as being a show. I said, thank you for your time. And I went across the street to a little mom and pop Christian radio station, and they put me on for 30 minutes every Wednesday between shows like the Sword of Joshua Full Gospel Independent Pentecostal Hour and, you know, the Holiness Fire of God Temple Worship, right, whatever. And I think I could reach more people if I went outside on my street and yelled. And yet I did it. I did it for 8 months, every Wednesday. And then WLAC called me, and they said, we've been listening to your show. We want you to come over here. So I did. I started on Sunday mornings, in between church. I'd play the early service at church on the piano. I'd go over there and do my show live, go back and do the second service at church. Sunday mornings were busy for me. And then I moved to Sunday afternoon. And then we went syndication. And then now here we go to Sirius. Well, then I went on to American Family, did a separate show for them on their 170 stations. One time I had 200 total stations. And then I've cut the Sunday afternoon show now to combine it and go to Sirius, which I believe is going to be a really, really big step for us. But our mission at Standing with Hope has encompassed Gracie's journey and my journey, and it's for the wounded and those who care for them. That's our whole mission statement: for the wounded and those who care for them. And we give out of our own journey. It's personal to us. It's not something that we just kind of came up with. Hey, this would be a nice charity for us to be a part of. This is who we are, and this is how it started. And we went to Ghana with our prosthetic limb ministry, the first place. And I told Gracie, I said, I don't want to. Number one, I don't want to run a nonprofit. Number two, I don't want to go to Africa. And here I am running a nonprofit, and I go to Africa. And but Johnny Erickson taught us, people kind of helped mentor us. They said, well, we were going to go to Eastern Europe, and they said, no, if you're going to go somewhere, go to Ghana. We got a good network there. If you can make it work there, you can make it work anywhere. And we've been making it work there. We've hubbed out of there. We've actually have not decided to go anywhere else. It's very expensive to do what we do, and it's just us. But we have patients that come as far away as Nigeria to the clinic there. And so we treat a lot of people, and we've treated hundreds and hundreds. And then we have a prosthetic limb recycling program where donated limbs come, from all over the country to a prison in Tennessee, where inmates volunteer to disassemble them so we can take the components that can be recycled and ship it over there. And then we purchase new stuff. So that's what we do, and everything we do extends from that. And the book, the show, the podcast, all of it is all extensions of that. And we get calls now. We've expanded the concept because I think what I've done is there's so many people that focus on the aging population in this country, and that's important. But what I've done is I've focused on chronic people who put themselves between chronically impaired loved ones, and even worse, disaster. Now, that chronically impaired can look like autism. It can look like Alzheimer's, but it can also look like addiction. And when you throw in alcoholism and addiction, mental illness, and all those things, you've got the hard numbers are that you've got 40-something million people taking care of their aging parents. You've got this vast number group taking care of special needs children. You've got 20-something million, I think, have some kind of mental illness issue, of severe mental illness, whether it's depression, whatever. You've got 14 million people admitting they have an alcohol problem. The numbers are vast. I mean, we're talking 60, 70, 80, maybe even more million, even though some of those things all overlap. Wherever there's a chronic impairment, there's a caregiver. Everywhere. I'm of the firm belief that you've got 300,000 churches or synagogues or places of worship in this country that over 50 million people attend. That means, statistically speaking, that everybody in this country has somebody in their orbit who's going to church. So what I want to do is equip pastors and clergy with the vocabulary of what it looks like to help a caregiver. If there's a diagnosis of Alzheimer's in the family, why aren't clergy asking, where are the guns? Are the guns safe? I'd rather a pastor ask that than a politician. If you have a family member who's got an out of control kid, let the pastors, let the clergy say, hey, have you secured the firearms around this kid? And the word will get out. You say it enough, collectively, you got an untapped cadre of people that could say this. And if you say this collectively, repeatedly, guess what? We can start saving lives today. We don't have to wait for legislation, which will be ineffective anyway, because I haven't found legislation that's going to help criminals stop breaking the law. But I get the drama, I get the talking points of the politics and all that kind of stuff, but I deal with the practical. And the practical is the people of God have to lead on these social issues. We let abortion get away from us. We let a homosexuality issue get away from us. We let gay marriage get away from us. Now we're letting transgender get away from us. I can't speak to all those things. That's not my area. I do the best I can with it. But when it comes to the caregiver issue, that I can speak to, and that I will speak to, and that I do speak to. And I believe that the people of God must lead in this issue. Otherwise, people are just going to be listening to words of death. Look around the country at the race to medically assisted suicide. Look around the country at late-term abortions. Who would have dreamed, other than C. Everett Koop and Francis Schaeffer, that we'd be in this place? They actually said this back in their series they did, Whatever Happened to the Human Race. I don't know if you ever saw that or not. It's worth seeing. But that was 40-something years ago they said that. But here's where we are. And part of the reason we're here is because the church has collectively failed to speak life with clarity and authority into these situations. This is what I do. And I speak it in a way that caregivers understand. I speak fluent caregiver. And so I want them to understand these things. What does it mean? I had a guy calling the show Saturday, and he was taking care of his granddaughter who has a lot of seizures. And he said, I struggle with this because when the seizure's over, we feel like we've got the victory. And I stopped him. I said, no, you have the victory while she's having the seizure. You got to understand that. You have victory while they're in pain. You have victory while they're in rehab. You have victory while these things, because that was won at the cross. And so it's a theological shift for a lot of these people because they're not used to thinking that way. They're used to thinking if everything is going well, then we have victory. And I'm saying to you, everything is well. We are going to walk in this in victory because of what happened at the cross.
Amen.
That's a whole different way of thinking about this.
Now,
It doesn't mean there won't be tears.
right. Is the Family Caregivers Act going to have any impact on getting financial support or raising the level of awareness, or is this just another feel-good?
I actually applied to be on the advisory board of that, and they turned me down. I have no explanation why. But I have very little confidence in anything coming from Washington to be of great help to family caregivers. It may help some people, but it's not going to help on the level I'm trying to help, because I'm telling you, if a caregiver's heart and mind is a dumpster fire, which it is, nothing from Washington, which is a greater dumpster fire, can help bring clarity to that. So even if you give a caregiver a sack full of money, if they are so distraught that they can't think straight, they're not going to know what to do with the sack full of money.
Right.
I'll give you an example. Minority owner of the Minnesota Vikings earlier this year, married for 60 years, is taking care of his wife with debilitating, I think she had Alzheimer's or something. I don't know all the details. Finally reached the end of his rope, shot her, and shot himself. Money was not an issue for this guy. So what is Washington going to offer him? What is the Family Caregiver Act going to offer him? What is the Family Caregiver Act going to offer the scenarios? One out of every 2 weeks, I believe it's happening in Florida, that same kind of thing, when you have a suicide, homicide, suicide, actually, in that order. And it's usually a man who is killing his wife, not out of hate, but out of desperation. So Washington needs such a cranioproctologist right now because they are so messed up. What are they going to offer? But we as the church, what do we have to offer? And this is what is driving me on this, because if we don't get out there and do this, then you're going to see more people putting a bullet to their loved one's head in a hospital bed or smothering them with a pillow and then turning it on themselves. Why shouldn't they? Give me a reason on a world level why they shouldn't, versus what does the gospel say?
Well, and this is exactly why you have created and written these 2 books plus music. And I think that the music aspect we haven't talked a lot about lately.
CD coming out this fall. Gracie's new CD is coming out.
So
She's been working very hard on it. So we'll and I promise you, when it comes out, I will have her on this show and have her talk to you. I will get her up at 6 in the morning Montana time so that she'll be bright and early, and I will mainline coffee into her.
All right. Well, we need to get her on.
I'm on record now of saying that.
That's right.
So it will have to happen now.
Well, we cannot talk enough about the need for help for caregivers and hope for caregivers. Peter Rosenberger, author of 7 Caregiver Landmines and How You Can Avoid Them and Hope for the Caregiver. These resources are firsthand experience of living 30 years with an amputee and someone who is in chronic pain, and going to bed every night knowing that the person laying next to him is in pain, and waking up the next day embracing another day of pain. And life-changing decisions they've made to pack up and move from Nashville to Montana because the doctors say that this is what's best for her. So there's a certain amount of sacrifice, there's a certain amount of esteeming the other more than yourself, but not to become where you are putting yourself on the cross and dying for the sake of caregiving.
We have a Savior. We don't need it. We don't need me.
Amen. Amen. And so
I want to interject something. When callers call into my show, the first thing I ask every time is, "How are you feeling?" And I had a caller on Saturday, and I have to do this a lot with callers. He started rattling off his loved one's chart. We're dealing with this and this with my so and they have this and this and this and they have this. And I had to stop him, and I said, "Look, I get that you know your loved one's chart. Most of us caregivers do. What's going on with you? How are you feeling?" And he went back down in that loop again. I had to do it 3 times before he was able to say, "I'm devastated." It took 3 times of me interrupting him while he went off down this long litany of maladies that they have to deal with. And this is what I do. If you call into my show, you will expect me to say, "How are you feeling?" And I will not budge from that until I hear, "How are you feeling?" This is something I take very, very seriously, because if a caregiver doesn't learn how to express what's in their own heart, they're going to be in a world of hurt. And they're already in a world of hurt. It's going to get worse.
Amen. Amen. Peter Rosenberger, thank you as always for a very, very full hour. We never run out of things to talk about because this is such an important issue. And we look forward to seeing you here on the last Friday of the month of August. That would be September the 30th.
First Monday. Oh wait, let's see. You're going to be in Israel, right?
No, I'm not in Israel until next year. So I will see you here the last Monday of September.
All right.
Looking forward to it, my friend. God bless you, and keep in touch.